Afternoon, folks. Russell here, coming to you from the shop once again. As you know, we've been doing some suspension and steering work on this 2006 Jeep Wrangler TJ. We're at the point now we've got to do an alignment. But before I do the alignment, I wanted to talk a little bit about Jeep steering geometry. All right, one of the things I wanted to mention or talk about briefly, when we talk about vehicle alignment, there's some terms that we use: caster, camber, and toe. So we're going to use this tire, and we're going to pretend that it's the right side tire of the vehicle. So this end of the tire that's facing you, the consumer, is the front of the vehicle. So when we talk about toe, this is the toe of the tire. Toe in, toe out. All right? We generally want just a hair of toe in, because that creates some stability in the vehicle. If you have zero toe to just a hair of toe out, you end up with a vehicle that's very darty, dives around the road a lot. All right? So that's toe. Camber. Now on live axle vehicles, if you have a camber issue, you've got a bent axle. There's no way to adjust the camber on these vehicles. But for the sake of discussion and learning, we're going to talk about camber. Top of the tire, outside, inside. Camber is the tilt of the tire in relation to the road. So negative camber, the top of the tire tilts in. Positive camber, the top of the tire tilts out. All right? Generally in performance automotive applications, you want a little bit of negative camber. On a Jeep, you can't adjust it. It's zero camber, okay? The last thing in alignments is caster. And caster is a weird angle. Caster is the angle of the kingpin in relation to perpendicular to the road. With positive caster, the top of the kingpin is further back than the bottom in relation to the road. And what that does is, as you turn the tire, it induces negative camber. Positive caster gives you a stable vehicle. That's what allows the tires to self-correct, self-return to zero as you're at speed. As you lose positive caster, especially in Jeeps, we get into what's called death wobble, where the steering wheel just shakes you to death and you're always fighting it, okay? And that's because it's not a stable vehicle. So how do we end up with death wobble in a Jeep? When you lift it. That's how, all right? In Jeep TJ, Jeep XJs, and I think the current Wranglers, we're a live axle with a coil spring. So we have to do something to keep that axle from floating around front to rear. Well, they use double triangulated control arms. They're a fixed length. So when you lift the vehicle 2, 3, 4 inches, it actually works on an arc. It doesn't work straight up and down, it works on an arc. And as you change that arc, you change the angle between the top ball joint and the bottom ball joint. In a old school two-wheel drive applications, we called that the kingpin. It was one pin that went through. So when I say kingpin, I'm talking about the imaginary line between this ball joint and the lower ball joint. What we want for positive caster is, if you're looking at it from the side, this is the front, you want it to be like that. That's exaggerated, but that's the way you want it. As you lift these vehicles, it lifts on an arc and it starts making that kingpin vertical. And that's what creates a negative or a not enough positive caster situation, and you get into these oscillations. The only way to fix it is to fix the caster. The only way to do that on a TJ or an XJ and some of the later Jeeps is to get adjustable control arms like this consumer has, where we can adjust that control arm and rotate the axle back. So let's walk over here to the CJ. Let's talk about how we fix death wobble in a CJ. In a CJ, we have leaf springs, all right? The leaf springs do two things. They're our spring, and they also locate the axle fore and aft. So we don't have to have wonky control arms. I can put up 3-4 inches of lift with a stock shackle on a CJ, and I'm not changing that kingpin angle. You get into death wobble and CJs and other front leaf sprung, so YJs as well, front leaf sprung vehicles, when you start extending this shackle out. When you make this shackle longer, same thing, you're changing that angle and you're rotating the kingpin. If you do that, if you end up with death wobble, or not enough positive caster in a CJ or YJ, the way to fix it, number one, get rid of your lifted shackles. These are stock length shackles. The other thing we can do is we can actually come in underneath the spring and put a 4 or 5 degree shim wedge in there, and that'll rotate the axle back. Alignment. If you have a Jeep, and I don't care, XJ, YJ, ZJ, WJ, LJ, if you have a Jeep and you're encountering death wobble, get your alignment checked. I will bet you dollars to donuts that you don't have enough positive caster, and there's ways to fix it. That's all I got on that part of the subject, and then we'll go on and finish doing the alignment on that TJ. So we'll come under here, and we're going to talk about the tie rods, drag links, what things are. So on a Jeep TJ, the steering gear, which is everything we're looking at here, consists of the steering gearbox, a drag link that connects to the right, a tie rod that connects to the left. Tie rod's adjustable, drag link is adjustable. Tie rod is used to adjust toe. The drag link is used to adjust to center the steering wheel. Those are the only two adjustments you can do on a factory Jeep Wrangler. That's identical whether it's a Wrangler TJ, a Wrangler YJ, or the older Jeep CJs. While the geometry changes a little bit in how some of the items are run, the nomenclature and what it does is all the same. So we had to replace the left tie rod end and the left side steering knuckle. So as a recap, this bolt was loose. The steering knuckle was, the tie rod end ball joint was loose in the knuckle because the knuckle was worn out, because somebody had tightened this with an impact wrench. They should only be tightened with a wrench and a torque wrench specifically. So we had to get a replacement knuckle. Fortunately for Jeep owners, Wrangler owners, they use the same identical knuckle for 91 and up Wranglers, 91 and up Cherokees, and the first generation of Grand Cherokees. I believe that's the ZJ. All use the same knuckle. The only difference is if you have a vehicle with ABS, you have to get an ABS knuckle, but you can use an ABS knuckle on a non-ABS vehicle, which is what we did in this case. So we had to replace these components here, which then necessitate having to do an alignment. As you can see, I've got a 4-foot level clamped to the brake rotor, and I've already leveled it out, and the vehicle is resting on jack stands even though we're on the lift. You have to do that on the TJ because it has a Y-type steering. So you've got a drag link that comes down and connects to the right side steering knuckle, and then on the drag link is the tie rod for the left side. So if the suspension is drooped, it changes that geometry and actually pulls toe in. So you have to have the suspension weighted, full weight of the vehicle on the suspension to set the alignment on a TJ and the YJs. On a Jeep CJ, you don't. It's got two separate rods. Tie rods go from steering knuckle to steering knuckle, so you can actually have the vehicle up in the air and do the alignment. So we're going to set this alignment real quick. But what I'm looking for, and I don't know if you can see it, she's running 33-inch tires. which actually 33-inch tires have about a 32.5-inch diameter, true diameter. So I've marked my 4-foot level. I'm sitting right in the middle at the axle. So then I come 16 inches out, make a mark, and 16 inches out the other side, make a mark. And I did that on both sides. So now all I've got to do, and what I'm looking for is between 1/8 and 1/4 toe in. So the front of these levels need to be closer together than the rear. And ideally I'm looking for 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to measure that here real quick. So I'm at 59.25 on the front. 59.25. So let's go to the back. Wow. That's a lot of toe in. 62. Did I do that right? 62. So we're gonna double check this. Sorry, it's not 59.25, 59 and 1, 2. Go. All right. Okay, so I had to reset my levels, make sure they were clamped both in the same spot so there was no bow. I've already taken my initial measurement. We've got a whole lot of toe in, so we got to take some of that out. That's going to be fun. So what I've got to do is make this rod, the tie rod, longer. And that means twisting it this way. And we'll measure again. So 60 and 1/8. $61.5. So you got to make it longer. $60 and 3/8. $61.25. 60 and shit. 60 and 11/16. And 60 and 17/16. So that is 6/16 difference. Just a little bit more.
That's 3/8.
Yes, too much. 3/8. $60 3/4. Three-quarters, 6/8, 12/16. So 16, 12/16. And this is 60 and 14/16. So we're gonna take it back.
That's an 8.
Huh?
That's not an 8. That's
Yep.
Yeah, it is an 8.
We're gonna close it up. Put it right there. I'd rather err with this large of tires on the toe end. We'll measure it again. $11/16. We are good. All right. So, not a perfect science setting your toe this way. The big thing is make sure you're toed in, not out. If you're toed out, vehicles get darty. You want to be toed in between an 1/8 and a 1/4. So ideally 3/16. We're actually at closer to a 1/4, and I'm okay with that. So just to recap, we replaced the steering knuckle on the left side and the left-hand tie rod, and therefore we had to do a quick alignment. So that's all I got for now. If you like this content, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get future notifications. And as always, there's more to follow.